to welcome all our guests to the hearing. Turn off your cell phones, please. I always ask for that. And today we are hearing 5 measures. I'd like to announce that the following bill has been pulled for today's agenda, will not be heard. We're going to have a hearing Tuesday of next week. And we're going to take up Senator Bates's bill. That's SB 1X110. And she is working on that bill. We will have a hearing on that bill next week. And I believe
we need one more for
one more. So we'll be operating now as a subcommittee until we get a quorum with one more member. And as soon as I do get a member, I'll call for the roll. So we have the bills in order, and we need 8. Yeah. We have the bills in order. We'll call Senator Huff up, and SB X12 is his bill. And this is the greenhouse gas reduction bill. And Senator Huff, you have the floor on this bill. So you are presenting your bill now.
Chairman and members, you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear
you. Mindful that we're just a sort of working group now, not really a convened committee yet. Californians pay some of the highest transportation taxes in the nation, and we're all here today because we know our roads are in terrible shape. Twice, the voters have passed constitutional amendments to protect transportation taxes paid by California motorists, Proposition 42 and Prop 22 passed by wide margins. Last year, we placed fuels under the state's cap-and-trade system. Unfortunately, cap-and-trade funds are not subject to existing constitutional protections. The Energy Commission estimates that putting gasoline under the cap is costing consumers 10 cents a gallon, approximately $1.9 billion. In fact, I think Finance scored that a little bit higher for this next budget year. If cap and trade were under Article 19 protection, just like other taxes paid by motorists, $1.9 billion would be directed to transportation infrastructure. My bill simply proposes to statutorily direct cap and trade funds generated by fuel to repair and maintain our streets and highways. I know there will be a suggestion that using cap and trade gas taxes is not an acceptable use of AB 32 funds, but I respectfully disagree. AB 32 funds are supposed to be used to reduce greenhouse gases. Idling cars and trucks stuck in heavy traffic are getting less fuel efficiency because of the deplorable conditions of our highways, which are clearly contributing to greenhouse gases. While I was chairman of the Alameda Corridor East project, we were doing grade separations down in the San Gabriel Valley. We did a study about idling traffic when they were waiting for trains, and we found a substantial amount. At that time, we were looking for particulates and other pollutants, not carbon dioxide, but we found that idling cars do indeed generate a lot of extra greenhouse gases and pollutants, and that can be reduced when you move them more freely. Using cap and trade funds to move cars more efficiently through our streets and roads will reduce gas consumption, thereby reduce greenhouse gases. I did not support AB 32 and think it's still an illegal tax. But this legislature is spending this money on programs other than fixing streets and road problems. So if we're going to tax motorists under AB 32, I believe the revenue ought to be used to create a better transportation infrastructure. The voters are willing to pay their fair share in taxes. They just want to make sure the taxes they pay are being used to fix the roads that they're driving on. This bill fulfills the promise that Prop 42 and Prop 22 made, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Huff. We have a quorum now. We'll call the roll, please.
Bell.
Here.
Bell present. Canella.
Here.
Canella present. Allen. Allen present. Bates. Here. Bates present. Berryhill. Gaines. Hertzberg. Leyva. Leyva present. Liu. McGuire. McGuire present. Mendoza. Here. Mendoza present. Pavley. Wachowski.
Here.
Wachowski present.
Okay, we want to hear all the speakers in favor of the bill. Please come forward. Do you have any speakers in favor? Speakers opposing the bill, please come forward. We have a few.
I'm shocked.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Bill McGavin with the Coalition for Clean Air. We sent our letter along with 33 other groups opposing the bill because this is an inappropriate and almost certainly illegal use of greenhouse gas reduction money. That money by law needs to be spent to further the purposes of AB 32, to reduce greenhouse gases. Spending money on our streets and roads, while it may be appropriate when funded from other sources, clearly does not meet the test of furthering the purposes of AB 32. As the Los Angeles Times said in an editorial on August 27th, using cap and trade money for road repair doesn't pass muster. That money is already designated for a number of worthy ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and serve other purposes, providing co-benefits, and so we urge you to vote no.
Other speakers? Welcome.
Mr. Chair and members, Michael Pimentel here on behalf of Caltrain and San Mateo County Transit District in opposition.
Okay.
Julie Snyder, representing public interest law firm Public Advocates. We're particularly opposed to shifting money away from the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program. SGC just funded their first 28 projects, 750,000 tons of greenhouse gas reduced, and we're really looking forward to seeing the second round produce much more. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah, please. Other speakers.
Mandy Egan with the Natural Resources Defense Council. We are opposed.
Joshua Stark with Transform. We're opposed. This money would especially also gut the Transit and Intercity Capital Program, as well as the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program. And we would really like to see the Transportation Special Session dealing with issues regarding transit and not going backwards. This bill would go backwards, so we oppose it.
Tyrone Buckley on behalf of Housing California, also in strong opposition along the lines of what my colleagues have also voiced.
Chanel Fletcher, Safe Routes to School National Partnership, and in the same vein of my colleagues, I am also opposed as well.
Okay. Any other speakers in the public that would like to come forward? Maybe Senator Huff, you can respond to some of those issues that were raised.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's termed inappropriate and illegal. Well, that's what courts are here for, and frankly, we think it's an illegal tax, but that's working its way through as well. You know, the LA Times doesn't drive policy in the state of California, at least I hope not. I agree with them sometimes, I disagree with them sometimes, but to say they're an authoritative source would be nonsense as well. We have deemed in this legislature the high-speed rail is okay for this grab bag of new money, and it's not even going to be operational for decades, if then. So if housing reduces greenhouse gas, if high-speed rail that's not electrified and not operational reduces greenhouse gas, then surely moving cars and trucks more efficiently on our roads does reduce greenhouse gases. So I would refute everything they say along those lines. This is something that currently we have seen the tax being generated at the pump, although it's not delineated, is about 10 cents a gallon. Department of Finance initially said it could be up to 76 cents a gallon. We would be remiss in our duties if we didn't carve some percentage of that out for use on our highways and roads, because it is motorists that are paying this, nobody else. It's not the low-income housing people. It's not the transit people. It's the people that are fueling their cars paying for this. They ought to benefit from it. Okay, Senator Huff has his comments. Do we have any comments from members that would like to have a discussion here? Senator Canella, please.
Just a brief comment. I'm sure this bill is a great bill, but I still think we're looking at all these bills individually. And for me, I think we should have one big bill where we've negotiated all the terms, and it's a bill that's before us. So I'm going to be laying off this bill and every other bill in today's session.
Okay, all right. Other senators like to discuss it? Senator Bates, would you like to?
I would like to contest the statement that you know, the reducing congestion and providing for better roads doesn't reduce greenhouse gases. I believe there have been a number of studies, and I know when I was on Transportation Authority, when we were looking at express lanes, the idea there is throughput. Throughput's not about people, it's about moving cars more quickly, because that does address air quality. And we had numerous studies that were showing that. In fact, it was showing that by creating express lanes and congesting general purpose, because you increase the requirement to ride in a carpool lane, you actually increase NOx in the air from those cars sitting in congestion. So providing more funds through this program for road repair and improvements on the freeways is absolutely in excess with improving air quality. And I think that's what greenhouse gas and the whole project has been about since we decided we had a significant issue with air quality and therefore climate change. So we continue to have the debate over what science is accurate, but I don't think we should pick and choose in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here. And this bill certainly takes a step in the right direction.
Okay. One of the questions I had, Senator, I think when you look at greenhouse gas emissions and the process that they're using for that particular subject, one of the most important thing is we meet the goal that we established for greenhouse gas emissions. So in looking at it, you have to look at, like, over time, how many tons of greenhouse gas emissions are reduced. I'm a believer in making people show specifically how many tons they're going to reduce and when they're going to reduce them. I mean, we got to get specific about it and put some, what I call metrics or performance measures into that. And that's why we have this process where we try to allocate the money based on what are the most cost-effective ways of doing it. So maybe you can address that. I'm thinking in kind of a broad brush bill like you have, as opposed to something that's real specific, that it actually reduces greenhouse gas emissions real specifically. And we want to pick the winners. We don't want to pick the losers. So maybe you can comment on that particular kind of concept. You know, I know people are talking about suing and doing it. Nevertheless, the greenhouse gas emission projects have to show the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and that's the way we prove nexus to the fact that this is actually a correct expenditure of the public funds. So we do have to recognize, we can't just say we don't need to deal with nexus. It's a real issue. And I think that applies to all the cap and trade bills. We're going to try to make sure that that happens. So we have a dialogue on that subject.
Well, absent a focus study that would demonstrate what the reduction would be, you're not going to be able to demonstrate it. But just as Senator Bates talked about at OCTA, and as I talked about previously through the Alameda Quarter East project, we did demonstrate a reduction in pollution, which includes greenhouse gases, by keeping mobility flowing. We have hundreds of thousands of vehicles plying our roads every day. And when we can speed them along better, they're more efficient. Now, if they were all electric vehicles, it would be moot. They're not. We have 6% of our fleet, or whatever it is, that's electric. It may be lower than that. But we are still a fossil fuel-based economy. And when we can expedite that and lower the emissions, then we're going to have reductions that should qualify for the very criteria that you say. You know, you had to do modeling to figure out whether housing that's near transit is going to save greenhouse gases, and it makes the presumption these people weren't climbing on buses that were going to be plying the roads anyway, because that structure moves whether there's people in them or not. But if they're near transit, you know, we presume that somehow they're walking or biking there, but we did a study and we quantified it. And frankly, that's what's needed here, to quantify what a reduction would be for our freeways. But because we have so many people moving on our freeways and roads, when you make that more efficient, I think you'll find a demonstrable reduction in greenhouse gases. Okay. Certainly, when you don't even have a rail system, but we're spending billions of dollars on that, tell me how that's reducing it. Because in the future, even the ridership is a crapshoot. We don't know what it's going to be, and that's been part of the problem. You can't make it economically viable unless you have enough ridership. We don't know what the ridership is, so we pick a number out of the air, and even there, it's decades down the road. So how does that reduce greenhouse gases? It's not doing it now, but we have decided for the purposes of this legislature that it does and qualifies for these funds.
When you talked about that experience you had with Alameda
Quarter East.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Different ACE than you're familiar with, yeah.
Is this the what?
You're used to the ACE train. We had the ACE project, so that's a different ACE.
I actually have some knowledge of that project.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about, can you give it, that's a specific project, right? But
Right.
can you tell us how that, when you studied it and implemented
In
it?
that case, it's a little easier to quantify because you have cars literally sitting there because the rails are down. They can't move, and they're idling. They don't shut their engines off. They're just sitting there idling. And as we were looking at the ports tripling in capacity, and we had trains that are going to be mile-long trains, and one to go by this way, the gate lifts, and a few people get through, and then the gates come down again as another mile-long train comes this direction. We had waits up to 50 minutes of some cars trying to get through intersections of the modeling. And that was a clear nexus on the emissions that they were generating. Obviously, if you're going under or over the rails, you don't have to stop. They're not going to be idling. So that's a lot easier to quantify. But I'm sure there are models that show mobility and when you're moving at 30 miles an hour versus 55 or 65 miles per hour, and you're getting that throughput.
So that project actually puts money into things like divided grades, separations.
And that's something that
and then the rail can just go through without stopping.
Correct.
And the cars can.
And by the way, the state puts in very little money into the grade separation. So it's usually local self-help counties that are kicking in money. The federal government has kicked in money. We had the largest earmark from I think it was the 1998 Transportation Efficiency Act, $100 million that Senator Boxer got us. But, that kind of got us kick-started. But that is a project that would clearly qualify because we've already done modeling on that. And at the time, we were more focused because we didn't have AB 32 in place. We were focused more on the NOx and particulates and things like that. But nevertheless, the difference between mobility and sitting waiting for grade separation would qualify for this very thing you're talking about. So even if you narrowed it for grade separations for other things like that we could demonstrably show would reduce greenhouse gases, we ought to be putting something in for the people that are actually paying for this, which is the motorists at the pump.
Okay, other questions? Senator Wachowski. I just thought I'd ask that. That's a pertinent issue, I think.
Yeah. It seems to me that the project you're talking about in any grade separation can compete with the 40%, subject to the other bills that we're going to hear later on today, of greenhouse gases. There's no preclusion of these good projects that will reduce congestion and can quantify the benefits of reducing greenhouse gases. And I think that's what we envisioned when we set up, or I wasn't here, but the gentlewoman from Agora Hills is, that we would have, when we had cap and trade, we'd have those funds would come in. This is just the first year. I guess my concern is that this bill would have all the transportation money go into to follow transportation. It doesn't allow the legislature whatever percentage, whether it's 40% or 25%, and it doesn't allow us to change with the times. And I'm wondering if you could comment on that, because again, I don't see there's a preclusion from any good project anywhere in the state that is going to combat emissions and meet our goals.
Well, we've already made some carve-outs of this, high-speed rail, transit-oriented development, or smart growth, however you want to call it, but we don't see anything that's going into grade separations or mobility of vehicles, and these are the guys paying it. We have a tradition around here of having industry-supported fees that, if you're an accountant and you pay certain things, then we tend to respect that they need that for their organization and others, and we generally don't take the money from one and give it to another. And yet with AB 32, that's what we're doing. Now that we put fuels under the cap, the people that are paying for it are not benefiting from it in the way that we have devised this metric. So I'm saying let's look at it differently. And I'm asking for all of it, but maybe it's half of it, maybe it's a third of it, but it ought to be something. And it ought to be going forward, because the 10 cents is not, that's what it is right now. It's not going to stay that. It's going to be dynamic depending on this market-based system that we've set up of cap and trade.
Okay. Other comments from members? Senator Pavley. I know she'd have a comment on this.
Well,
the gentlewoman from Agora Hills.
I do like that. Thank you, Bob. I'm going to quote you on that. So it was interesting, Senator Wachowski's comments on eligibility. I have my doubts as far as the just the road maintenance really being the, meeting the legal nexus, because generally good road maintenance means more cars even want to be on the road because it's repaired and no potholes and on and on. You can use, you know, as we've talked about before, some related projects that go along with it if you were doing road maintenance, not road maintenance, but you could do the transit stops along the way or the active transportation elements or some things that could clearly qualify in and of themselves for maintenance. But as far as fuels into the camp, once you start down this road of every single emitter has to have the expenditure in their particular category, you're going to have some interesting challenges there, I say. So if I were looking at where you get the most bang for your buck, and that means the most GHG reductions for those expenditures, I think alternative fuels, lower carbon fuels would be my number one pick. Put a little competition in the marketplace to create lower gas prices, because right now we almost have a monopoly. We have an oligarchy in fuel prices. So there are a variety of programs, yes, transit, all related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and motorists, giving them another option of getting out of their car, using it for fuels, which makes an incredible amount of sense. If you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, clean up the air, and get more bang for your buck of GHGs, I would believe the agencies that are reviewing the criteria, competitive-wise, they would go with those expenditures over just resurfacing existing roads. I'm in favor of raising money for road maintenance. That's not the issue at all. Should it be fuels, all of fuels, 2 million plus a year, whatever it is, billion going into just road maintenance and those purposes? I would say that would not be a priority expenditure of GHGs and meeting the test of the legal nexus when AB 32 and the scoping plan was envisioned.
Okay, other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Berryhill.
You know, if you take a look at the priorities that we've had in transportation money over the last 10 years, or just the budget in general, where transportation has been is this high, where Health and Human Services, and there's many good programs in Health and Human Services, but we're at $17 billion, Health and Human Services, we're at $2 billion in our road maintenance and transportation. So it's a priority issue. It's not today, you know, if we have enough money to do everything. It's just, what do we want to do? Yeah. What Bob's saying is that the money that we're putting into this should all go to road maintenance, and you can make that argument. That there's let's call it $2 billion just for argument's sake. $2 billion in cap and trade. There's another $1 billion in transportation weight fees or truck weight fees. Seems to me that this is a no-brainer. If our commuters, rural commuters especially, are using these roads, they're getting hammered. That money should be going to roads. You know, I don't know. I think that as we look at priorities in these budgets and what's going on in transportation today, that it only makes sense that the money we spend on roads should go to road maintenance. The little money that we've spent on road transportation over the years, a lot of that money, instead of going to maintenance, has been borrowed. So what's happened over the years is we haven't maintained our roads at all. So now we need a whole bunch of money to fix our roads. And I think at very least, if we're gonna start taxing with cap and trade or whatever kind of taxes to our rural folks and people that commute, that money automatically should go to roads. And I think this is a fantastic proposal by Senator Huff, and I'll be glad to.
He's got one more proposal that deals directly with that.
Maybe I'm ahead of myself. I don't know.
No, that's all right. Well, this particular bill is number 2, and that's deals with the high-speed rail. I call it the high-speed rail reallocation to road maintenance. I think that's a good way of putting it, right? How would you describe your bill in one sentence?
Common sense.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you'd say something like that. Okay.
Thank you for that.
It was I was
a setup question?
That's all right. But any other comments from members? Anybody have a comment? Well, Senator Huff, would you like to close?
Yeah, I'd like to add this. In January, the governor laid out that we had an infrastructure issue. We didn't do anything with the general fund, and certainly, I'll say it again, we had $10 billion in unanticipated revenue, and that goes back to the previous year, because I know somebody's trying to explain that on the floor today, the current year and looking forward to the next year. But $10 billion in unanticipated revenue, and we didn't solve the transportation issue. We didn't even touch it. So now we're in an extraordinary session looking for funding. I'm bringing to you here right now a new source of revenue that's outside of the general fund that currently is generating $2 to $2.5 billion a year. And it certainly seems that motorists are paying for that. And even though we disagree with this tax, motorists are paying for it. They ought to be benefiting from it. Currently, what it's generating is a grab bag of money. So you've seen the carve-outs for high-speed rail. You've seen the carve-outs for housing. Who knows what other carve-outs are going to be. But when you're allocating this money, because you have the majority vote to do that, you really ought to be looking at the people that are paying for that, and that's our hardworking families that are paying the gas taxes on this. To say that if you fix the roads, there will be more cars on it, that's part of the mentality that led us to the traffic congestion we have. Our state is growing. Not everybody can afford electric vehicles. They will be driving fossil fuel vehicles, and they need to move quickly to the market. They need to move quickly to work. They need to get to school, and when they don't, we make this a less desirable place to live. And it's all part of this stuff. We can have our noble ideals and work solely to them, but let's not absolutely punish the people that are paying the freight, and no pun intended. But we're looking for new revenues. This is a revenue pot that is likely growing, even though we disagree with it. We believe some of that should be going to the motorists paying for it. That's what my bill does. And if and when you take a vote today, I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Okay, on this bill, I think your bill goes too far myself. I mean, it's too broad and it goes too far.
It hasn't gone anywhere yet, with all due respect.
But I'll give you credit for one thing. I think you brought up a good project that sounds like a winner in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I think that project you brought up is certainly a winner. How that fits in with the policy that we have here with the legislation, I don't know, but I just think the bill, it also takes the money from the high-speed rail. It's already been, kind of, we made a decision. And I think my recommendation, unfortunately, would be to not support this bill. So I don't know, other members have comments. Okay, there's a motion. Okay, so any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
The motion is do pass and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Bell?
No.
Bell, no. Cannella? Allen? Allen, no. Bates? Bates, aye. Berryhill?
Aye.
Berryhill, aye. Gaines? Gaines, aye. Hertzberg? Hertzberg, no. Leyva? Leyva, no. Liu? Liu, no. McGuire? McGuire, no. Mendoza? Mendoza, no. Pavley? Pavley, no. Wachowski? Wachowski, no.
Okay.
So it's 3-9.
3 votes in favor, 9 against. We'll hold it on call for other members to vote. Other members, right? Cannell, okay. Senator Cannell said. Okay, so that, okay, 3-9, that motion fails.